something. I'm starting the recorder now because we do podcast this meeting. So, why do we do a 4-step, folks? Oh God, you already pinned it. Boy, see, you pinned my back. Didn't that work well? So, here, hang on a second. I gotta switch screens here because, oh no, maybe not. So, why do we do a 4-step? Because I got to Alcoholics Anonymous with a whole bunch of this emotional baggage. So that's the purpose of doing a 4-step, because we continue to beat our lives up and everybody in it with a whole bunch of emotional baggage that we haven't healed from, and we haven't had the tools to heal from it. So when we get to Alcoholics Anonymous, we are finally given some tools that will help us heal from that emotional baggage. And I got a couple of examples that I'm going to give you of emotional baggage. And ooh, wow, that's falling apart. That's okay. Guess I need to get that fixed. But here, I gotta do this because I need to see all of your lovely faces. Why am I not getting a gallery view? One second.
Is the other screen buried?
No. I'm not sure why. It might be. It might be buried. Huh. Oh well. I'll just imagine that you're all there. How's that? So, emotional baggage starts from the time we're little kids. It starts in our parents' home, and maybe with grandparents, aunts and uncles, cousins, whatever it might be. And it starts when we're in school. And we aren't born with this set of coping skills of letting stuff go. Somebody says something hurtful to us, and we just carry that around. And we get to Alcoholics Anonymous, and many of us are carrying a lifetime of emotional baggage. And then we get into our first relationships, and we get into our first relationships. And then that doesn't work out, so we get in another relationship. And what am I doing? I'm carrying the emotional baggage from the past relationship. So, for example, the picture that she gave me when I was 16 years old, here it is, 45 years later, and I'm still carrying this picture around. Because it was so special, and it meant so much to me, and it's part of who I am, right? And then, of course, the picture of the love of my life. You got the door, Trish. The picture of the love of my life, and this truly was the love of my life. She was wife number 3. I don't have any pictures of any other women in here. And how do our more intimate relationships with the opposite sex, or even same sex in today's world, start out? It generally starts out with some sort of sexual attraction one way or another, and we end up falling into bed to each other, and then once we do that, we fall in love with each other instead of it being just the opposite way around. And then things start not going so well in the relationship, and one of the first things to go is the great sex life, right? So then what happens is because things aren't going well in that relationship, I end up stepping out into the place that sells magazines that have paper covers over them. And mentally and emotionally, what I'm doing in my mind is I'm cheating on someone. And that leads to more difficulty in the relationship. And then, there it is. Hang on just a second here. And then in the There, now I can see your faces. So then we come into the age of technology, right? And we have cell phones and apps, and all of a sudden I can talk to people I don't even know that I never met before. And if I'm cheating in this relationship that I'm in, all of a sudden I start having these secret love affairs through my phone. And it does more and more damage, not only to the person that I'm involved with, but damage to myself as well. And I can't even recognize it because I'm living in the feel-good moment rather than addressing what life's problems are. And one of the things that happens is I don't fit into the box that you've made for me, you know, and you're not fitting into my box anymore. And this box ends up becoming just a box of stuff that doesn't mean anything. And as I go through through the relationship and my alcoholism by this point begins to progress, what happens is a whole lot of anger gets introduced into these relationships oftentimes. And you hurt my feelings, so now I pick up your favorite porcelain doll and I hurl it across the room. And of course, this little guy is the headless porcelain doll. I think he's supposed to be a monk or an angel or something like that, but he's no longer got a head because I threw him across the room, right? Because the element of anger has been introduced to the whole situation. And let's not mention the thing that makes me really mad in this relationship, and it's more emotional baggage, is when we talk about the elephant in the room, which is my alcoholism and how I'm treating, and maybe my bad behaviors and cheating and lying and just being dishonest. And maybe I'm even a narcissistic person that's trying to control and manipulate you. And I don't like any of that stuff. And it's always the elephant in the room. And as a result of all of these relationships never working out in life, what happens, this happens to be my favorite t-shirt, by the way. It's the one that I refer to as the one with the hole in the sole. And today, instead of putting it on like a normal shirt, I just kind of drape it over my head. And this is the way I wear it, because that hole in my soul has moved into my head. And I'm I am an emotional wasteland by the time this happens. And when nothing else in the world serves me, what happens is I get out the old smelly blanket that I have drugged from relationship to relationship. I've had this old smelly blanket since I was a little kid. And this is this old smelly blanket where emotional pain and depression and anxiety live. And it is the place that is my comfort zone. It's the place that when I don't want to deal with the rest of the world, I pull it over myself, and I hide from everything. And so when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was so incredibly broken, and I had all of this emotional baggage. And I'm going to talk about 13-stepping for just a second, because it's something that happens in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's like, hi, I'm here. Right? AA boy meets AA girl. Step 1, my life is unmanageable. Step 12, I'm fixing to share it with you. And I arrive at your doorstep and I knock on your door, and I've got my emotional baggage, and I say, where can I put this? This is all so important to me. And so I slide it under the bed, or I stick it in the closet, and everything in the relationship is fine and it's wonderful and it's joyful, until you do something that reminds me of her. And when you do that thing that reminds me of her, and you might not be anything like her, but when you do that thing that reminds me of her, you can kill the spotlight, Trish. What happens is I start to turn you into her. And everything that I do, all of a sudden I'm going back through all of those memories and ruminating and everything. and I start turning you into her, and I start picking at every little thing that you do. You're not that person at all. It's just that I haven't dealt with the emotional baggage of my past. And that's what step 4 does, is it gives me a pathway to deal with the emotional baggage of the past so that I don't have to live in it in the present. And I get to heal, and I get to forgive, and I get to learn. So we just do that before we go into our 4-step workshop, because personally, I love the visual examples. So, okay, Trish, we are ready. Trish is going to do the screen sharing. Relax and enjoy, folks, and I'll mention it now. It'll get mentioned again in a minute or so. But there's a page number at the bottom of every page, and if you have a question about a page, write the page number down, and at the end we'll go back and if you have any questions about the page, we will refer to it. So you're on, Trish.
You can also take screenshots with your camera of any of the screens that you like, because
Absolutely.
you want to share the stuff.
Absolutely.
So welcome to the Lewisburg Primary Purpose Big Book Study 4th Step Workshop. And we also will be putting this recording in audio only, no photos, on our website, lppbbsgaa.org, which stands for Lewisburg Primary Purpose Big Book Study Group AA. So welcome to our workshop.
It'll go on our YouTube channel too.
Yes, which I should update on there, but I haven't yet.
Our preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and to help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
And just a reminder, please keep in mind this is a workshop. We will be discussing some real-life examples of what could be difficult for some folks. And while we do hope to get some questions, and we want to encourage questions for clarification and for understanding, we don't want a specific discussion to encroach on topics that should maybe be saved for your sponsor for a one-on-one conversation. And we're available to do this afterwards or at another time, or your sponsor, however you're comfortable. And like we've said a few times, feel free to take notes as we go along, but keep in mind this workshop should not be used as a platform to start sharing a 5th step in your comments.
And Trish and I will put our numbers in the chat too, so if you ever need to call and ask any questions about it, we'll be happy to answer. Please use your notebook to write down the slide number from the lower right-hand corner of each slide. That way we can take all the questions at the end. But we'll have the slide number to refer to for clarification and further understanding.
We're backwards because this is usually yours.
Well,
so,
that's okay. Learn it.
Hey, I know it. So often we talk about the circle and triangle as being unity, service, and recovery. But that's actually backwards. And we have to have recovery first, and that's the bottom leg of the triangle. We need recovery as our foundation for the unity and the service to stand on. So the recovery is found in the Big Book from pages XXV to page 164. It's a set of 12 spiritual principles that are the 12 steps. Have you continued to actively take the 12-step process as outlined in the Big Book? And that's recovery and the mind. And then unity and the body, and that's found in the fellowship. A set of 12 spiritual principles that are found in the 12 traditions. Do you have a group that you are committed to? Is your group committed to the 12 steps And does the group live by the 12 traditions? And service and our spirit, found in carrying the message. It's a set of 12 spiritual principles found in the 12 concepts. This applies from the group level through the service structure all the way to GSO up in New York. Are you working with others and taking them through the 12 steps?
While this is a four-step workshop, it is always good practice to review the foundation of steps 1, 2, and 3 before beginning. Therefore, we will be reviewing some hot spots to be sure the foundation is intact leading into step 4.
Through the information we find in the doctor's opinion, along with the first 44 pages, we are given the information we need to self-diagnose our alcoholism. Only 51 pages in all lead us to this decision, and this becomes our step 1.
From Alcoholics Anonymous, page 30, step 1, we learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people or presently maybe has to be smashed. Wait for it. Bang!
You're a little slow on that tonight.
We like the graphics.
So being convinced from page 60. A, am I convinced that I am an alcoholic and that my life is unmanageable? Step 1. B, am I convinced that no human power could have relieved my alcoholism? Also step 1. Am I convinced that there is a power greater than my own power that can and will relieve my problem? A and B. And that's step 2.
Referring back to the chapter to the agnostics, page 50 and 51, this chapter is a pathway to letting go of old ideas and old beliefs and opening our hearts and minds to new ideas and new beliefs. And this happened soon after they wholeheartedly met a few simple requirements. Once confused and baffled by the seeming futility of existence, they show how the underlying reasons why they were making hard going of life. Leaving aside the drink question, they tell why living was so unsatisfactory. They show how the change came over them.
And life based upon self-will. And this comes directly out of our book, Alcoholics Anonymous, pages 60 to 62. The only difference is we're going to read it in the first person rather than in the third person as it's written. If my arrangements would only stay put, and this helps me find me in the book by reading it in the first person. If my arrangements would only stay put, if only people would do as I wished, the show would be great. Everybody, including me, would be pleased. Life would be wonderful. In trying to make these arrangements, I may sometimes be quite virtuous. I may be kind, considerate, patient, generous, even modest and self-sacrificing. On the other hand, I may be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. But, as with most humans, I am more likely to have varied traits.
What usually happens is the show doesn't come off very well. I begin to think life doesn't treat me right. I decide to exert myself more. I become on the next occasion still more demanding or gracious as the case may be. Still, the play does not suit me. Admitting I may be somewhat at fault, I am sure that other people are more to blame. I become angry, indignant, self-pitying. What is my basic trouble? Am I not really a self-seeker even when trying to be kind? Am I not the victim of the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if only I manage well? Is it not evident to all the rest of the players that these are the things I want? And do not my actions make each of them wish to retaliate, snatching all they can get out of the show? Am I not, even in my best moments, a producer of confusion rather than harmony?
I am self-centered. egocentric, as people like to call it nowadays. I am like the retired businessman who lolls in the Florida sunshine in the winter, complaining of the sad state of the nation. I am like the minister who sighs over the sins of the 20th century. I am like politicians and reformers who are sure all would be utopia if the rest of the world would only behave. I am like the outlaw safecracker who thinks society has wronged him. I am like the alcoholic who has lost all and is locked up. Whatever my protestations, am I not mostly concerned with myself, my resentments, or my self-pity? Selfishness, self-centeredness, that, I think, is the root of my troubles. Driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity, I step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate. Sometimes they hurt me, seemingly without provocation, but I invariably find that at some time in the past, I have made decisions based on self, which later placed me in a position to be hurt.
So my troubles, I think, are basically of my own making. They arise out of myself, and I am an extreme example of self-will run riot, though I usually don't think so. Above everything, I must be rid of this selfishness. I must, or it kills me. God makes that possible, and there often seems no way of entirely getting rid of self without His aid. I've had moral and philosophical convictions galore, but I could not live up to them even though I would have liked to. Neither could I reduce my self-centeredness much by wishing or trying on my own power. I had to have God's help. This is the how and why of it. First of all, I had to quit playing God. It didn't work. Next, I decided that hereafter, in this drama of life, God was going to be my director. He is the principal, I am His agent. He is the Father, I am His child. Most good ideas are simple, and this concept was the keystone of a new and triumphant arc through which I will pass to freedom.
Now that the book has given us the idea that our problem is based in self, we need a pathway toward finding out what our own selfishness, self-centeredness, fears, and delusions are. And this comes from the process of the fourth step inventory. The first 3 columns are centered around our resentments and how they affected us. Everything after that looks at our own thoughts, actions, and patterns. This is the discovery process of who we have become.
From Alcoholics Anonymous, page 62. How? First, I have to quit playing God. Why? It didn't work.
And then moving on, we move into our third step prayer from page 63. God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness over those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always.
Go back to that slide for a second, Trish. So, something to think about with the third step prayer. As we read pages 60 through 62, is it possible all of that selfish and self-centeredness that we read in that when we ask God to relieve us of the bondage of self and to take away our difficulties, that's some of the stuff, the foundation of some of the stuff that we're asking Him to take care of in the third step prayer. Just a thought to consider. Okay, Trish. The 3 aspects of a relationship with God from page 62. The director and actor. The director runs the show, the actor listens for directions. On my own, have I failed to provide what I need to be okay? Am I ready to make the decision that hereafter God will direct my life? Principal and agent. An agent represents who the principal or the employer would have them be. Have I failed to be the person I would have me be? And have I failed to make others who I need them to be? Am I ready to make the decision that hereafter I will represent who God would have me be. Father and child. A child trusts their father can provide what they are incapable of doing on their own. Have I failed in directing my life on my own power? Am I ready to make the decision that hereafter I will trust God will provide the power of what I need?
So there are many fourth step workbooks available. However, the fourth step was never meant to be a check the box inventory, and so many of the workbooks that are out there are. The instructions in the big book always say, referring to our list, which we have written out in detail. So for us, my fourth step workbook is just a tablet of paper, a tablet and a pencil. And in my case, the hard-headed bison on the top fighting, because I got that hard hit.
No comment. Before I begin, I pray something like this. God, please help me to see the truth about the things in myself which have been blocking me from you.
So we start with our resentment list, and this comes directly off of the form on page 65 in our book. And it says, we were usually as definite as this example. And the one thing to consider is I'm looking at these first two columns, but I'm going to work the columns from top to bottom. First, I'm going to list all the names of the people I'm resentful at. Then I'm going to look at the causes. Because if I go across, if I look at my first resentment, Mr. Brown, and look at the causes why I'm resentful, then I look at Mrs. Jones, and then I look at why I'm resentful at her, I'm going to start feeling those feelings. I'm going to start getting aggravated, and then I may stop. But if I have all the names listed first, I'll be able to see the list may not be that long. And that way, even if I start feeling all those feelings and that frustration and that resentment as I'm working on the causes, knowing that the list isn't that long, I'll be able to get through it a lot easier than going side to side. So column 1, I'm resentful at Mr. Brown, Mrs. Jones, my employer, and my wife. Only 4 resentments here. And the cause. I'm resentful at Mr. Brown, his attention to my wife. He told my wife of my mistress, Brown may get my job at the office. It's one person, 3 separate resentments. Moving down, I'm resentful at Mrs. Jones, and the cause, she's a nut, she snubbed me. She committed her husband for drinking, and he's my friend. She's a gossip. One person, 3 more resentments, so a total of 6 resentments so far. My employer, unreasonable, unjust, overbearing. Threatens to fire me for drinking and padding my expense account. Frankly, if I'm padding my expense account, I probably deserve to be fired. But one person, 2 resentments, so that's now a total of 8 resentments between those 3 people. And finally, my wife. The cause, misunderstands and nags, likes Brown, and wants house put in her name. So we have 4 people, 3, 6, 9, 10, 11 resentments against those 4 people. Not a whole lot comparative. There are some sponsors who may tell you, if you don't have 50 people on your resentment list, you're not done. Not necessarily a true statement. Not everybody knows that many people have resentments at. So don't allow someone else to make it harder than it is. Just list who is it that you're mad at right now.
And now we are going to add the 3rd column, which is also on page 65. And in the 3rd column, after completing the first 2 columns, working from top to bottom, the 3rd column are the 7 areas of self, which begin on page 64, and they're listed there. And they are self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook. So we have Mr. Brown in the first column, Mrs. Jones, my employer, and my wife, and then we have the causes again, his attention to my wife. I'm just going to abbreviate all these. She's a nut and she stubbed me. Moving on to my employer, unreasonable, unjust, overbearing. And my wife misunderstands and nags, and hey, it's got a thing for Brown. So this is the example of what Bill uses in column 3, and this is the 7 areas of self. So with Mr. Brown, it affects my sex relations and my self-esteem, and then the fear is in parentheses. So I'm going to look at what fear is driving that. And we'll get into that a little bit later. With Mrs. Jones, my personal relationship, self-esteem, and again, fear pops up. My employer, self-esteem, fear, and security now comes into play. Because, hey, if I lose my job, I need that money. I needed that money so that I could drink. My wife, it affects my pride, my personal sex relations, and my security and fear as well. And we'll delve into these a little deeper and how to actually apply the 7 areas of self. Before we get off of this slide, though, I want to say a lot of people, when they do this, they'll just say fear, self-esteem. They'll list it the way it's listed on this page, but they never really get down to what the root cause of it is, down to the roots of it. And that's what we're trying to do with this.
All 3 of these columns are lies.
But they're my feelings.
Feelings aren't facts.
Oh. Feelings aren't facts, but they are valid. And we need to find out where they come from and decide what we are going to do with them.
There are people, and I was one of them, who would look at the chart on page 65 and say, this is the 4th step, that's all there is. However, there is so much more work to do. The full directions start on page 65, but they don't end until page 71. Page 72 then states, we have been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path, our causes and conditions, from page 64. Without these other columns, I am missing most of my discovery process, and the following slides are the rest of this process.
Ouch, here it comes. From Alcoholics Anonymous, page 66 and 67. Before each 4th column, consider in a paragraph form how I have done the things I've presented in column 2 to the person I've listed in column 1 and or others. Refer to page 66. This was our course. We realized that the people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick. Before I move on to the rest of the slide, I just want to say something about that. So here's my abbreviated version. I did this to you because you did that to me, and I did it because my anger was justified to do it to you. Because you hurt me, so I'm hurting you. That's what all that column 4, column 2, column 3 stuff means in an abbreviated form. So after considering this realization, say the 4-step prayer, reference page 67, or as we like to call it, the sick man's prayer. This is a sick man like myself. How can I be helpful to them? God, save me from being angry. Thy will be done. So here's what I'd like to present to you as a result of these 2 prayers. These 2 prayers, even though they don't use the words, they instill the idea of forgiveness in my heart. Because it is literally impossible for me to be angry and helpful to someone at the same time. I just can't do it. And asking God to save me from being angry also instills the idea of forgiveness in my heart.
So what you're looking at here is a form that we have come up with, which you'll be seeing throughout the rest of this workshop. And we do have these worksheets available If you'd like a copy of them, just stick your email in the chat and I can send them out to you when we are done. And what you'll see will be the example pages, and then you'll see on the blank pages. So you'll have the directions, but then you'll also have the blank pages that you'll be able to fill in on your own. So what we're looking at here is just the way that the form looks on page 65. We cut off the wife not for any reason other than space. Not that we're trying to get rid of her. So in column 1, we list our resentments, and then in column 2, we list who we're resentful at, and then in column 2, we list the cause or what the resentments are. So it gives the example in our worksheets, and then it gives the blank forms, so that you can fill it in on your own.
Go back to that slide for just a second, Trish. One of the things that we've done to it is every page that you can print out in the white pages, it has all of that stuff that's written up there in red and blue and black at the top of it. That would be stuff we would normally write in by hand, but we've taken some of the work out of it for you so that all you have to do is start filling in the names and the things behind it. You have a question, Larry? Yeah, unmute. You're muted.
Yeah, Jamie, y'all are buffering in and out. I don't know if anybody else is experiencing that or not. You two are. Mine doesn't seem to buffering, I don't think, but.
Malia says, you can hear us okay, Malia? Yeah,
Okay.
So it's got to be your Wi-Fi, Larry.
Okay, so I don't know. Okay, I'm getting about half of what you're saying.
Well, there's nothing we can do about that.
I know it.
You can go out and come back in, check your Wi-Fi settings. You won't miss much.
I can hear fine. You're still in and out. So, do you have a TV or something on?
Are you on your computer or your phone, Larry?
I'm on my computer.
You got any other Wi-Fi going in the house, like a TV or anything?
No, no, nothing's on.
Okay. It might just be a bad Wi-Fi connection, and that's one of the reasons that we're recording it.
All right.
Okay, you can go out and come back in. You won't miss much. Maybe it'll connect better. Okay. You can move on, Trish.
Okay.
7 areas of self. The third column focuses on the 7 areas of self. These are found on pages 64 and 65 in the Big Book. Our focus will be on self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, pocketbook. I ask myself, how do my resentments affect me in these areas of my life? Keep in mind, sex relations has nothing to do with the act of sex here. Rather, the focus on male-female same-sex relationships or relationships with the partner of your choice. While pride is not listed on these pages, it is included in the 7 deadly sins, which are discussed in the 12 and 12, step 4, page 48. It also ties very closely with self-esteem and gives me a different perspective at looking at myself. The 7 deadly sins are pride, greed, lust, anger, gluttony, envy, and sloth.
So, and this is what our 4th column would look like. Notice for us, it's not really a column. Because again, for me, if I'm taking a piece of paper, splitting it up into columns, when I run out of room, I'm going to say, I'm done writing. So this way, I'm just writing a little paragraph section, so I have as much room as I need to write. and I don't have to worry about running out of room. So at the top of the page, I'm going to write, God, please let me see the truth. Maybe add in, God, let me see the truth about my resentments, or let me see the truth about me. And these are my instructions for using the 7 areas of self. And those resentments, again, are self-esteem, pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook. I'm going to use 1 page for each resentment, not 1 page per person. So back when we were looking at the chart initially, we had 4 people, 11 resentment. So I would end up this, if I was doing this on all of the people that Bill had on his chart, I would end up with 11 pieces of paper. And up in the upper right hand corner it says, first name, Mr. Brown, first resentment, his attention to my wife. And the effects how does this resentment affects me? I'm going to keep column 1 and 2 in mind, the person and the resentment, because it says on page 65 in paragraph 3, we considered it carefully. And I want to look at that third column, and how that affected us, and consider each item and the opposite of each one to let the inventory reveal what my fears are behind each of these 7 areas of self. So that first one that we're going to look at is self-esteem. And we define self-esteem here as how I see or how I feel about myself. What's the role I've assigned myself in this relationship? And the sentences that I write down are going to start with I am. For example, I'm the best husband she could have. Or the opposite, I'm the worst breadwinner there is. I'm also going to look at the fears that I have related to this. What are the fears I have relating to those 2 sentences and to my self-esteem? The fear of not being good enough. The fear of someone trying to steal my spouse. I'm going to move down to pride. How I think others see me or feel about me. What's the role that I've assigned myself in their life? Sentences should start with others should or maybe others should not. For example, others should not pay so much attention to my wife. And the fears? The fear of being alone or the fear of abandonment?
Oh, it's my turn. This is an example of column 3, again using the 7 areas of self and how it should look, and this is still continuing with that. So we move on to ambition. What do I want to happen here? Sentences start with I want blank the example. I want a healthy, happy relationship. Or I want to be left alone, damn it, you're bothering me. And we look at the fear that might go with that. Maybe a fear of being alone or possibly even losing everything. Security. What do I need here to be okay? And the sentences start with your own example. I need my wife to love and respect me. I need Brown to respect my marriage. Identify the fear, being disrespected, being unlovable. Personal relationships, deep-seated beliefs of how this relationship is supposed to look. The example is, wives trust their husbands. Friends should respect me, my marriage, and my family. The fear identified with that is not being accepted and not being respected. Sex relations. My deep-seated beliefs on how real men or women are supposed to be. Sentences start with a real man or a real woman. Real men don't pursue other men's wives. Identify the fear there, abandonment. And pocketbook. Affects my finances. Sentences start with no one should, shouldn't. Others should not go into my wallet without my permission. No one should go into my phone without my permission. Brown should not ask my wife to dinner and then ask her to pay for it. The fear related to that is financial insecurity. So one of the reasons that we use the example for wallets and phones today, you know, my wife used to ask, she'd say, would you grab that? It's in my purse. And I'd just pick up her purse and I'd take it to her because as far as I was concerned, What was in her purse wasn't really any of my business. But today, so many of us do business and do banking on our phones and stuff like that. If someone goes into my phone without my permission, they could very easily Venmo themselves $500, and there wouldn't be anything that I could do about it because it originated from my phone. So it's really nobody's business what's in my phone, and it's a personal security issue. I want to talk about the sex relations for just a second. Where do most of us see our first impressions of how husbands and wives act together? We generally get those first impressions from mom and dad or grandma and grandpa. Those are generally those first impressions. If we came from a kind and loving home, then we have impressions of what a kind and loving relationship should be like. But if we've come from an abusive home, we have an impression that that's what a relationship should look like too. So as we go through our own lives, we can see where these patterns may have started at a young age.
So again, example of the sheet that we were just looking at on the left in the yellow, and the blank sheet that would be in the workbooks that we could send out to you, all with the spaces for you to fill in. And if you get one of these, print off as many copies as you need, whatever space you need, so that you can get everything out and be thorough and fearless.
Fourth column. Oh, yeah. Is that you? Yeah, it is, huh?
Well, it can be.
Go ahead.
And the fourth column. This is where I discover my defects of character and my shortcomings. The directions are found on page 67, paragraph 2 in the big book. Here I'm going to use 1 page per individual, not 1 page per resentment. I'm going to resolutely look for the harms that I have done to others and list where I am to blame. This will be the foundation for my 8th step list. And this form can be used for institutions, but may need to be modified since it's not a person. And then it says on the bottom, I need to continue to recognize my own fears. And the direction for our fear inventory will be found on page 68 in our slides. So we haven't gotten to the fears yet.
Yeah, it is. I'm just trying to catch up to where we're at here. So again, 4th column worksheet. And again, it's an example of what our 4th column should look like. The realization of how I have done things I resented in column 1 to the person or column 2 to the person that I listed in column 1. In other words, again, you did this stuff to me, Buster, so now I'm doing it back to you, right? So this is where I turn on my get even machine in this column. So I need to take a look at these things. Where had I been self-seeking? Look around the whole resentment. What did I do? Where was I to blame? My own selfish actions and activities were what? Who did I affect? Who else did I pull into this drama? I placed blame. I acted out. I called your boss to tattle. I said I was going to see my friends, but really I was going out to get laid. Selfish. Where was my selfish thinking while I was doing the things above self-seeking actions? My selfish attitudes were, I demanded to get my own way. I was filing divorce papers in my head while we were in bed. I had planned it all out. You were going to pay and I would cut you off.
And dishonest. What were the lies I was telling myself that resulted in my selfish thinking that then caused the selfish behavior? Where was I in delusion? Where was I lying to me? I could find somebody better. You would never be good enough. You didn't care about me or our family. And where was I afraid? What were the fears that drive the delusions or those lies that we just talked about? Why was I afraid? I was afraid I would be alone, even though I don't want you. The children wouldn't have their other parent. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to pay the bills and we would be homeless. I feared for my safety or for retaliation. The fears drive the dishonesty that result in the selfish thinking, and that's what drives the self-seeking actions. So they're all connected. And while we're doing this part can be done in full phrases, or in phrases, not in full sentences. We're not writing our life story. We're not writing the great American novel. Just notes so that when you're with your sponsor and you're starting to share this stuff, there's enough information there to remind you, what is it I'm talking about here?
Consider if there are any other fears that should be on the fear list. Consider the opposite of each fear, if it applies, and add it to the list. Don't just look for the negative. Look for the positive as well. For example, I fear being alone, or meeting another abusive partner. I fear being homeless. I fear having to move back in with my parents. I fear losing my job for the lies I told when I was out. I fear my truth. I fear being successful. I fear having too many friends. The harm. Do I see the harm that I've caused? Look around. The resentment. Parents, friends, employers, innocent bystanders, friends I complained to who had nothing to do with the situation. I have harmed my spouse, my children with my lies. I've harmed my boss by not showing up for work. I've harmed my relationship with other family members. I've harmed my credit and financial status due to my selfish actions. I've harmed friendships by complaining about my spouse to them.
And the fear inventory. So first we're going to read the big book from page 67, the third paragraph, where it says, notice the word fear, all the way to page 68, the third paragraph, where it says to outgrow fear. Then I'm going to make a list of all my fears. And so far, as we've been doing this work, in that right-hand column or underneath, we've been writing down our fears associated with this whole fourth step, each step of the way. And then I want to make a graph of columns, rows and columns. Or you can use the fear inventory template, which we have included in our workbook. We're just going to look at the first column, and then we're going to look at each row individually. So I'm going to look at all of my fears that I found in my inventory and make a single list of them in the first column, top to bottom. But I'm only going to write each fear once, even though it may have come up as a fear in my inventory more than once. I'm only going to write it here one time. Then I'm going to ask myself, why do I have this fear? And I want to look all around this fear. And the next slide will show how to follow what we call the trail of fears, by looking at the fears hidden behind each one. And this comes from page 68, where it says, we reviewed our fears thoroughly. We put them on paper, even though we had no resentment in connection with them. We asked ourselves why we had them. And wasn't it because self-reliance failed us?
So here's an example of the trail of fears, of the underlying fears. I fear not being good enough. If I'm not good enough, I fear I'll be unwanted. I fear being unwanted. If I'm unwanted, I fear being alone. I fear being alone because I fear the emotional pain of being alone. I fear sitting in the emotional pain. If I sit in the pain long enough, I fear I'll drink again. I fear drinking. For me, to drink is to die. I fear dying because I fear the unknown. I don't know what dying really means. I fear the unknown because I fear there is no God. I fear there is no God, so I repeatedly trust self-reliance, even though I fear self-reliance fails me. But wasn't I trying to kill myself anyway? Is this alcoholic insanity? Is this how I should think the drink through? Am I setting myself up for a drink when I am drowning in my fear?
Now we're going to take the same information and plug it into our template. So our fear template, the very first fear in that first column, because in that first column I'm going to have all of my fears listed top to bottom. Right now we're just looking at the one. I'm going to look at that one. I fear being not good enough. Why do I feel I'm not good enough? What's the fear behind that fear? And behind that is the fear of being unwanted. What's behind that fear? It's the fear of being alone. And what's the fear of that? The fear of the emotional pain. And what's the fear behind being in that emotional pain? The fear that I'm going to drink again. And the fear behind me going to drink again is the fear of dying. And what's the fear of dying? The fear of the unknown. And I fear the unknown because maybe there's not a God there after all. This is just one example of the trail of fears. Each one of us will need to follow each individual trail to identify our own fears. And in our example on slide 53, we'll look at some repeated fears that we can use as patterns in our inventory.
Now, hey, let's talk about sex for a minute.
Still get
Hey, we're right on track. I always get this page. Sex Inventory and Sex Ideal from our big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, page 68 and 69. Now about sex. Many of us needed an overhauling there. But above all, we tried to be sensible on this question. It is easy to get way off track. Here we find human opinions running to extremes. Absurd extremes, perhaps. One set of voices cries that sex is the lust of our lower nature and a base necessity of procreation. Then we have the voices who cry for sex and more sex, who bewail the institution of marriage, who think most of the troubles of the race are traceable to sex causes. They think we do not have enough of it, or that it isn't the right kind. They see its significance everywhere. One school would allow man no flavor for his fare, and the other would have us on a straight pepper diet. We want to stay out of this controversy. We do not want to be the arbiter of anyone's sex conduct. We all have sex problems. We'd hardly be human if we didn't. What can we do about them? We reviewed our own conduct over the years past. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? Were we at fault? What should we have done instead? We got this all down in paper and looked at it, and those are all very specific, pointed questions that we need to ask ourselves in this inventory.
They all come straight out of the book. So the following is the continuation of the sex inventory in question form, taken right out of the book. And as always, we always ask God to show us what we need to see before we get started. So we read the big book from page 68, the fourth paragraph where it says now about sex, to page 70, the second paragraph where it says would bring heartache. And then pray, ask God, and make a list of the relationships in my life. And then determine what can be done. Write a brief history, a short paragraph of each relationship, including motives for getting involved, specific sex conduct, major points in the relationship, and how the relationship ended, or how it is now.
I review my conduct, and I look at each relationship answering the following questions. Where had I been selfish? Where had I been dishonest? Where had I been inconsiderate? Whom did I hurt, including those that were brought into our drama, including the innocent bystanders? Did I arouse jealousy? Did I arouse suspicion? Did I arouse bitterness? Where was I at fault? What should I have done instead? The answer to the last question is never. I shouldn't have gotten involved, because I can't change the past. I did get involved, and now this has become an experience of my life. Refer to what I should have done or how I should have behaved in the relationship. Make sure to be especially complete with this answer, since it will be used later when writing my sex ideal.
Before we go on, I want to touch a little bit. We've used the phrase a few times, the innocent bystanders. It's come up here in our sex inventory and also back when we were working on our resentment inventory. And those innocent bystanders are somebody who's not directly involved with whatever the situation is, but somebody who I dragged in just to pat me on the back and build me up and say, yeah, you're doing it right, I'll take your side. Now, how often did I have an argument with my husband and I'd go to work and pull one of my girlfriends aside and say, do you believe what he did last night? She had nothing to do with it. But now I'm getting her involved. I'm making her become a part of either the problem or the solution. And it can apply here too. Do you believe what he wanted me to do last night? Or do you believe he cut me off? Dragging in anybody who's not really involved, rather than going to someone who can help me find a solution and someone who is involved and can help me get a way out. So, writing my sex ideal, pages 69 and 70 from our book. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and to help us live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly nor selfishly, nor to be despised and loathed. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it. God alone can judge our sex situation. Counsel with persons is often desirable, but we let God be the final judge. We realize that some people are as fanatical about sex as others are loose. We avoid hysterical thinking or advice.
Suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does that mean we are going to get drunk? Some people tell us so. But this is only a half-truth. It depends on us and our motives. So if we are sorry for what we have done, and we have an honest desire to let God take us to better things, we believe we will be forgiven and will have learned our lesson. If we are not sorry for our conduct, and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. We are not theorizing, these are the facts of our experience. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal, for guidance in each questionable situation, for sanity, for the strength to do the right thing. If sex is very troublesome, we throw ourselves the harder into helping others. We think of their needs and work for them. It takes us out of ourselves and quiets the imperious urge when to yield would mean heartache. The reading continues through the end of the chapter on page 71, encouraging us to review our work and then move forward towards amends. This also encourages us to continue to align ourselves with God so that He can remove whatever self-will has blocked us off from Him. And Trish later will have to go back and put the page number that comes from up in the top right-hand corner. It's missing on that page.
It's on this page and it's a continuation.
Okay.
So, the following slides are now a real working example of a fourth step inventory, and this part will go a little bit quicker. It follows the first person in column 1 all the way from first resentment through all 4 columns, discovery along the trail of fears, and ending with the sex inventory and sex ideal. And this takes us through the entire inventory process, starting on page 65 to the end of page 71, and complete step 4 on this 1 resentment.
Oh, is this me? Sorry, I was sidetracked for a second. So this is an actual real life resentment that we went back into the archives and pulled out to give you a real example of what it should look like on paper, and Trish probably said all of that. So, column 1 and column 2, Dad, the cause for my resentment. He abandoned our family and left us with nothing and nowhere to go. Use the following pages to continue with 1 page per resentment. Multiple resentments would mean multiple pages. For example, if you have 5 resentments against your father, you're going to have 5 separate pages.
So at the top of the page, we're going to write or trace over what's already there. God, please help me see the truth. And now we're moving into the 7 areas of self: the self-esteem, the pride, ambition, security, personal relations, sex relations, and pocketbook, and they come from page 64. So I am resentful at my father. I am resentful at him because he abandoned our family and left us with nothing and nowhere to go. This affects my self-esteem. I am not good enough for him to stick around. He loved my brother more. And the fears associated with that, the fears of not being good enough, the fear of being alone, and the fear of abandonment. This affects my pride. No father should be angry or violent to a 3-year-old. Fathers shouldn't leave their sons. And the fears there, the fear of anger, the fear of violence, the fear of being unlovable, and again, the fear of abandonment.
Notice how on these pages we put squiggly writing in there so it actually looks like somebody hand wrote it in there. That's just another example of how it's supposed to look. Here again, continuing in the 7 areas of self. This affects my ambition. I want my dad back. I want to be loved by my dad. I want my dad to be a role model. The fear associated with that, abandonment, not having a role model, not having a strong father presence in my life, affects my security. I need to feel safe to be okay. I need to feel loved to be okay. And I need to have shelter and food to be okay. The fears associated with that, homelessness, hunger, hurt, alone, emotional pain, being unlovable. This affects my personal relationships. Real men don't leave their families. Real men support their families. The fear associated with that. Being alone, not knowing how to treat others. This is a little more of a sensitive issue, but yes, ladies, it happens to us men too. This affects my sex relationships. Real men don't bring strange people into their homes to have sex with their families and then leave to have sex somewhere else. The fears associated with that are abandonment, sexual abuse, molestation, not being safe, fear of not knowing what a healthy relationship is. This affects my pocketbook. Others should not threaten my home and food and utilities and finances. The fears associated with that, homelessness, abandonment, going hungry, not being able to pay my bills. Notice the repeated fears. This will be expanded on another page in the fear inventory.
So now I'm looking at me, and I'm looking at finding my patterns, my defects of character, and my shortcomings. And again, along the top of the page is, God, please help me to see the truth. And the 4th column worksheet, the realization, did I repeat or develop the same behaviors that I resented in column 1 to the person I listed in, or in column 2 to the person I listed in column 1? Did I retaliate? Did I get mad at you for doing something and turn around and do the same thing right back at you, or do it to somebody else because I couldn't do it to you? Where had I been self-seeking? I acted out to get my own way. I put unreasonable demands on my father, mother, and other family members. I knew emotional drama would always get me attention. I blamed you for all my problems. Where had I been selfish? I didn't care what others had to sacrifice to please me. I constantly demanded attention. When I didn't get the attention, I accused others of not loving me. Where had I been dishonest? I would always tell lies. I would steal. If I got in trouble, I would blame others. I had been so honest or so dishonest for so long, I couldn't see what the real truth was. And the biggest tragedy I see now is I was lying to me.
And fourth column continued. Where had I been afraid? I was afraid of being caught in my lies. I was afraid I wouldn't be loved because of my lies. I was afraid I would always be alone and not wanted by anyone. The above fears drive the delusions that result in the attitudes behind the actions. Consider if there are any other fears to be on the fear list. Consider the opposite of each fear if it applies. I had the fear of abandonment or fear of staying in a toxic relationship, fear of being alone or filling my life with too many people or with the wrong people. Both of those. Fear of too many people in my life or fear of being invisible to others. Fear of staying in a bad relationship or not being financially stable enough to be on my own.
And while those ors are there, they're not necessarily there to say one fear or the other. I could have both of these fears. But the or is there just to say they're kind of opposites of each other. And I could have the opposite of each fear at the same time. I could be afraid of having too many people in my life, but at the same time be afraid that I'm invisible to other people. So the or in there, it's a little misleading. It's not there to say pick one or the other. It could be both. It's just a way to separate one from the other. So here is our trail of fears. And in that right-hand column going all the way down are all the fears that we have found so far. The fear of not being good enough, the fear of being alone, the fear of abandonment, anger, violence towards me, the fear of going hungry, the fear of being unlovable, not having a role model, being homeless. Got another page there, but I'm not going to go through all pages because that'll add another half hour to the presentation. So I'm going to look across the first column or the first row. I fear being not good enough. And this will look familiar because it came from the example. Why do I have the fear of not being good enough? Because I'm afraid I'm unwanted. You're not going to want me if I'm not good enough. Why am I afraid of being unwanted? Because if you don't want me, I'm going to be alone. Why am I afraid of being alone? Because if I'm alone, I'm going to be sitting in my head and be sitting with that emotional pain. Why am I afraid of the emotional pain? Because then I'm going to sit in it. And when I sit in that pain, I grow roots and I don't move. Why am I afraid of sitting in that emotional pain? Because if I do, I'm going to drink again. Why am I afraid of drinking again? Because I fear I'm either going to die or I'm going to go insane. And what's the fear behind that? The fear of the unknown. And why do I fear the unknown? It's because maybe there's no God after all. There's really nowhere else to take that. So I'm going to stop that row there. And I'm going to move down to the second row. And the first one, and it says in that first column, the fear of being alone. But if I look in the third column, in that first row, I've already looked at being alone and taken that all the way to the end. So those X's there just don't necessarily mean stop. Well, it means stop, but it only means stop because I've already done it. It's in that first row. But it's showing me the fear of being alone has now come up 2 times already. Coming down one more row to a fear being abandoned, a fear of abandonment. Why do I have the fear of being abandonment? Because I fear being alone. And now 3 times that fear of being alone has come up. If it's come up 3 times, it's probably a pattern that when I'm talking to my sponsor with my fifth step, I need to say, hey, this fear has come up a whole lot. I'm going to move down to the next row, the fear of anger. Why do I fear anger? Because it's an unpredictable emotion. And why do I fear that unpredictability? Is because I don't know what I'm capable of. I've seen me when I'm really, really, really angry, and it's not pretty. I don't like it. Why do I have the fear of that? Because it's emotional pain. It causes me and others emotional pain. And I'm going to stop because I've already looked at the fear of the emotional pain in that top row. Moving down one more row, I fear violence towards me. Why do I have this fear? Because I don't like to be hurt. And what's the fear of being hurt? The fear of the emotional pain. So now I've done 4 or 5 rows, and I've already got 3 different fears, or 2 different fears that are already repeated a few times. When I did my fear inventory this way the first time, what I noticed was all those fears that I had, all those fears listed in the very first column, and I had like 2.5 pages of them. When I sat down and I looked at each one, they really all boiled down to just 3 or 4 big fears, which then were hiding under other fears. But when I could look underneath and see what was the fear underneath and what's the fear underneath, I don't have 65 or 75 different fears. I have 5, but they present themselves in different ways. And when I'm aware of that, when that fear starts coming up, I'm not going to say, oh, it's fear, and move on. I can go immediately, usually to one of these 5 that I know I have, that have been biggies in my life, and say, yeah, that's it. And once I know what that fear is, I can sit down, I can write, I can talk to somebody, I can call somebody, and I'm going to be able to walk through it rather than sitting. Your turn.
Well, thank you for taking us through the fear template. This is a real working example of the sex inventory from an actual real resentment. This inventory is based on a list made from the History of Relationships, page 69. This is not a continuing the work on column 1. This is an inventory on our conduct in relationships and not based in relationships. So we write the name and the relationship, and we write a brief history of how the relationship started. My motives for getting involved were, she sure was cute. She was so friendly. Her smile sucked me in and made me melt. My specific conduct in the relationship has been, my specific conduct was totally self-seeking, so I could feel better about myself. Others commented on how cute my girlfriend was. My ego.
No, not you.
Not me.
The major points that came up in the relationship are, I don't play well with others. I always want my own way, and it's usually sexually motivated. I want control in every situation, whether it's sexual or not. I would do whatever it took to keep you from leaving me. We would fight over spending time with my family at holidays. Religion and politics would usually lead to more fighting, and sometimes getting beat every now and then. How did it end, or how is it now? I walked away in anger because you didn't do what I wanted. Or I acted out in such a way that you would leave. That way I wasn't the bad one for leaving. But either way, the relationship on both of our parts was so sick and so toxic that leaving was a means of survival. And just a footnote and something to consider. After the process of taking the steps and making amends, some of these relationships have healed and have become healthy friendships. The important part is that I have taken a look at and taken responsibility for my own part.
And I can tell you that to be the truth because an ex-fiance and I from 40 years ago 40 plus years ago have healed and are best friends today. So, again, continuing with a real life example of a sex resentment. Sex inventory worksheet. Look at each relationship and answer these 9 questions. The reference to those questions is on page 69. Where had I been selfish, concerned only with myself? I wanted sex all the time, or I never wanted sex. I was demanding. When I didn't want sex, I pushed you away or rejected you. I demanded unhealthy or unreasonable sex. Where had I been dishonest, deceptive, or fraudulent? I said you were the only one, but you weren't. I said I was going to work early, but I stopped by to see my girlfriend first. Where had I been inconsiderate, my disregard for others? I did not consider your feelings. I did not consider your plans when I decided to stay late at work and went to see my girlfriend.
Who did I hurt? And I need to look around the whole relationship. I hurt my spouse. I hurt our children. I hurt my boyfriend's children. I hurt extended family members. And I hurt relationships at work and other friendships when they caught me in my lies. How did I arouse jealousy? I constantly openly flirted with others in front of my husband. I flirted with my friends' husbands in front of them. How did I arouse suspicions? How did I make you doubt my honesty? I lied about where I was going to be and when I would be home. I would constantly take phone calls and texts when I was home, but I wouldn't let you see it, tell you who it was from, or tell you anything about it. I would call from his house with his parrot squawking in the background and couldn't figure out how you knew I was there. True story, that was my ex. How did I arouse bitterness or deep resentment? I left our family gatherings to see his family instead. I paid his rent and neglected our family. I lashed out in anger, always defensive. But he needs me! And where was I at fault? I would always put our family second to his family and their needs. Need me to go back, Larry?
Yeah, flip it back. He's taking pictures. No, you got it? Okay. And question number 9. What should I have done instead? Don't write, not gotten involved in the first place. What should my behavior in the relationship have been? Make sure you are especially explicit about number 9. You will refer back to this list while writing your sex ideal. I should have put my family first. Should have been honorable and faithful, financially and emotionally supported my family. I should have been kind, loving, and tolerant. I should have taken care of others' needs before mine. I should have prayed and asked for God's help. The harms. Write any specific harm that comes to you while writing. The realization that I caused deep emotional wounds in my family that may never be repaired. Many of the things I did could be considered abusive or narcissistic. In my experience, I have caused unknown and sometimes irreversible damage to others' lives. And a prayer. God, I ask you to help me mold what the ideal relationship should be in my life, that I may be able to live by that ideal and live a healthy relationship with others. Amen.
Now that we have followed the instructions and taken a look at ourselves and our conduct, let us now turn to page 69, paragraphs 3 and 4, and refer to the instructions in finding our sexual ideal. In this way, we tried to shape a sane and sound ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mold our ideals and to help us to live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised or loathed. Whatever our ideal turns out to be, we must be willing to grow toward it. We must be willing to make amends where we have done harm, provided that we do not bring about still more harm in so doing. In other words, we treat sex as we would any other problem. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. The right answer will come if we want it.
I love this part. There are 12 steps and 12 traditions for recovery. There are 11 chapters in our book. Is it possible that the chapter 12 in your book will be your story? So how will it read? Finding yourself through this inventory could be the beginning of your chapter 12. It is now up to you to write your chapter 12.
And a quick fifth step note. The bottom of page 74 to the top of page 75 gives us the directions on how to choose who is to hear our fifth step. Its suggestion is that we choose someone that will keep our confidentiality. This could be a priest, minister, rabbi, or counselor, people who are bound by confidentiality by law. However, experience has taught us of the value of taking this step with another alcoholic, sponsorship. We believe that the advantage to this is that the experience of another alcoholic knows where to direct us through the process of recovery. We recommend that you prayerfully ask God to bring the right person into your life to help through this process.
We hope that you will continue to join us in our bi-monthly workshop, as this work is only a beginning into the truth about ourselves. It is our experience that when people return month after month with new questions, we all grow in understanding and effectiveness. We continue to ask God to mold us into the people He would have us be, so that we can help others to find their truth. Yours in service with love, LPP BBSG. And now we are open for questions, comments. You can all feel free to unmute, and I saw a few smiles through this, so obviously it was relatable. Hi, Malia, come on in.
I am so, first of all, I have a little bit of relief, but I'm so in shock because I don't remember any of this when I did my first step. And
that's why I told you to come in this one.
I said the same thing.
And I love how you guys say walk instead of sitting on it. I've been sitting on a lot of stuff. And I'm just I'm baffled right now. I need to do, I have a lot of work to do. And I feel like all this stuff that you guys talked about, I feel like I do that stuff over and over, just over and over. And I don't know, to me, not having a drink is right, my primary purpose, right, to stay sober. But the emotional part, I'm just sitting on it, and I'm really happy I came. I'm just relieved, to be honest with you. And I saw myself in a lot of the pages that you guys were talking about. So I have work to do.
Well, thank you. We are glad you are.
Yeah, that's why.
That's
why I asked you to come to this one, because I know it would help you.
Thank you, Nancy.
And Trish will be putting her number in the chat. I've already put mine in the chat. If you have any questions and you need help working through it, feel free to call us. I'm sorry, Trish, go ahead.
Mine's already in there.
Okay. I wasn't paying attention.
We hit enter at the same time. So often I hear in rooms that I came in here to stop drinking. But if all I had was a drinking problem, once I stopped drinking, life would be great. I came to realize when I stopped drinking that I still had a living problem. I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to treat other people. And that's what the rest of the steps do, is they treat me how to interact with the rest of the world in a calm and useful and polite way. And this fourth step helps me to see, how did I treat the people in my life while I was still drinking? And in some cases, before I even picked up that first drink, that wasn't such a great way to treat them. And how can I fix it? How can I take that then all the way through the amends so that I can mend that relationship? If all I had was a not drinking problem. Once I stopped drinking, I wouldn't need to keep coming. But I've got to learn how to start living somewhere, and this is a great great way to do it.
You know, with the exception of the real life working resentment that we have put in here, because we wanted more of a visual than what Bill gives us in that example on page 65. But everything in this whole workshop is in the book. The problem is people see those 3 columns on page 65 and think, well, that's what the whole 4th step is. But if we continue to read on, the book continues to tell us to put pen to paper and to get these things down on paper, and gives us the specific instructions. We've just gone into a little more detail about it and what the results should probably look like when it's done. Trish and I have taken several people through this, and even a couple of actually all of our own sponsees. And I'm not going to lie, we've had a couple of sponsees relapse. Not because they did this work, but because they stopped doing the work. Because they stopped continuing to take a look at themselves. You know, on page 85 of our book, it says something to the effect, it is easy to let up on a spiritual program of action and rest on our laurels, and we're headed for trouble if we do, for alcohol is a subtle foe. Right?
Yeah.
So on page 84, in one paragraph, it uses the word continue 4 times. 4 times. So I need to take and continually do this work. I said this to one of the guys that I sponsored today. The complacency is the enemy of the alcoholic. And when I'm resting on my laurels, I am living in complacency. So feel free to call us and ask us questions if you get stuck on something going through this. Trish teaches school, so her time isn't quite as available as mine, but I drive truck all day, so I'm available anytime, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I know she will when she's available.
Okay.
Yep.
We're all available
Thank you.
on Zoom and go through the slides again too.
Yeah, absolutely. We have been known to open this up and just do one-on-one work with it.
Okay.
Larry, you can unmute now. Did you hear us better after you came back in?
Well, 8:30, my internet cleared up, so I missed a lot of what you said, but I got all the slides in it.
So Trish won't be able to post it to YouTube until tomorrow because it takes that long to upload. But what I will do when we have it posted tomorrow night when you come into the meeting, by the way, I'm going to stop my recording.